Hello, Professor Langer.
Yeah, hello. How are you?
How are you, sir?
Fine. How are you?
Greeting from Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you very much.
How is the US?
We're all doing fine.
I hope
it looks like
you must have been entering into summer now, I guess.
Voice echo.
It's still cold?
No, do you hear some voice echo when I talk?
Oh, okay. So it's getting better where you are.
Let me try and log out and try to join again.
Oh, you are not hearing me?
No, I'm hearing you, but my voice is echoing. It shouldn't be echoing.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Let me try again.
Okay. Hello, Professor Ochono.
Yes.
How are you?
Good day, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. It's good to see everyone. Dr. Zalanga Samuel. So,
yes, how are you?
Good, my brother.
Yeah.
Hi.
Is it
long time?
Is it Moses?
Me.
I keep track of you on Facebook.
Brother Jono, long time.
Yes, sir, long time.
I saw you last at AAR. That was a long time. 2017. Yeah. That's when I saw you last.
That's true.
Yeah.
Professor Badegeshin, so good to see you.
Yeah, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
Good to see you again.
Yes, indeed.
So, how's US? How's Vanderbilt?
Vanderbilt is there. I left.
Wow.
When I left them, they were good. I'm at home now. I'm in Nigeria.
Yeah.
You're in Nigeria?
I'm in Nigeria, yes.
You're in Nigeria now?
Yes, I'm joining from Nigeria, yes.
Where precisely are you?
When did you come? When did you come to Nigeria?
I came in yesterday.
You are warmly welcome. So I hope you are not getting too hot.
No. my body loves it. Loves the heat. It's a big change. It's a total change from the cold of the US.
Yeah. The rain is being haphazard this year. It's not. It's not falling the way we expected.
So, for how long are you going to be there?
I'm going to be around for 2 weeks, roughly.
2 weeks.
Okay. 2 weeks. So short. It's a short visit.
Yes.
Wow.
It's nice to be home, and it's always great to touch base. So yeah.
Fortunately, you don't have to worry about any insecurity.
No. So thankfully, no. That's not a big worry right now.
Okay.
Just basking in the joy of being home.
Good, yeah.
Home food and seeing people that I haven't seen in a while, so it's nice.
Good morning or good afternoon.
Yeah.
Big man of the press. Pastor, how are you?
Fine.
Pastor Wariboko, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, by the grace of God.
How is the family?
The
Good to see you again.
Yeah. Oh, my light is very clear. Yeah.
So how is our Boston?
Boston is doing well.
I know.
Boston Day can't pay as they talk.
I know. It has shown. It has shown on you. It has shown on you.
I don't know how a city shows on a person.
What do you say?
I said, I don't know how a city will show on a person.
Well, yeah. You say, in my tradition here, they say if the house is good or not, you can reflect. You can see it in the skin. You can see it in the body.
No, but that they refer to your spouse. How well you are being fed or how well life is going.
So we're still waiting for people to show up. Oh, it looks like there are 9 of us.
Yeah, but you are waiting for what? Yeah, Elisami, Simeon is not. And then Catherine also.
Okay, so
And Priska, there is another person from Nigeria, Priska.
Yeah, she hasn't joined yet. Is it? Yeah.
I think Ilesami said he might be joining later, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Ilesami, I think he said that in his email.
Yeah, but if he doesn't, Chairman, do you make arrangement for how his paper should be read, or you are going to read it?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to read it. I'm not.
No, but as a chairman, he made arrangement for somebody to read it if he's not going to.
Yeah, I asked him whether he knows somebody in the panel who will do the reading. Okay, Piska has just joined.
Yeah, but as a chairman, if no one can read it, then it falls on you.
Yeah. I just feel comfortable.
Okay, but how about Catherine's paper? You know how to play it also?
Oh, I haven't downloaded it.
Oh, boy.
I thought you.
No, you don't. You are the chairman. You handle the logistics also.
Oh.
Yeah, you are supposed to play it also. If she's not going to be around.
Okay. So how many panel members do we have now?
You have 3.
And we are supposed to be, so 2 people are not Simeon, and then
Catherine. Yeah, you told me that country sent a recorded message. So that's what.
Oh yeah, I forwarded it to you. I was thinking maybe, oh my God.
No, you have the host privilege. You are the only one that can do it. Yeah.
Oh.
No, but I'm not supposed to read that paper. It's not, yeah, it can't be that.
No, yeah. No, I thought I shared it with you so that you will know what she wrote, since she expects you to respond or something like that.
No, you sent me the hard copy, but if she's not going to be around, you are supposed to play her recorded stuff in a time slot.
Okay, I'm really sorry. I haven't downloaded that. Prepared for this.
Okay.
Yeah. So should we just proceed then now?
Yeah, but she also sent you a hard copy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't I forward the hard copy to you?
Yeah, but I'm saying that for the sake of the audience, you should have made an arrangement. Both of them send you hard copies. So as the chairman, you can just read it through in their time slot if they can't make it because of technical stuff.
Yeah. The reason why I never thought about me doing the reading is just simply because I thought my role was just going to be to mediate, to just be the chair, but not to read somebody's presentation. Actually, I wasn't prepared for that. So, and if I have to print it now, I don't want it to take too much of our time because I have a meeting also coming up. So is it okay if you just respond to whatever they said, or?
Yeah, I can, but so yeah, there's no problem. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think so. We should get started. Let me see. We have only 10 people. Okay. So let me begin. I apologize because I was thinking my role is just to, these people are going to be around, and that's why I didn't read it. So I sent an email much earlier today just to give an idea of how we're going to proceed. And I think we're going to proceed without delay. I want to welcome everybody to the meeting. It's a great honor for me to participate in this. And I want to just make some brief comment before I introduce myself, and then everybody will introduce himself or herself. I've known Professor Wariboko for quite some time. Actually, I got to know him through just my intellectual curiosity because I was looking for some books at the intersection of faith and kind of economics and things like that. And then I found his work to be very, very profound. And as I go deeper exploring his work, I found it to be very, very deep in terms of their exploration of issues. So we know very well that he's an accomplished scholar, but more than that, I would say in my interaction with him, he's a person full of humility and gravitas. And what I mean by gravitas is, you know, sometimes in Nigeria, the way people behave, if you're there in the country, very little thing people would like to show you that they are this, they are that. But I interacted with him, and often when I interact with people, I'm very observant carefully to see how they are. So he's a man full of humility and gravitas. And then I noticed that in his scholarship, just my quick observation, and this is the last one I would make, it's just that, as Jürgen Habermas said, there's always a human interest that informs any kind of scholarship. There's always a human interest behind that, whether people are aware of it or not. And I think in his case, human flourishing, which is something that featured very, very much in this book that we're going to be discussing today. And also, it is something that comes. It's something that comes across all in his scholarship. And then the other thing that I thought is also something that I see clearly is this commitment to creating a more just and fair society for all, which is something that is very important. Sometimes when you read other people's scholarly work, you find out that this may not necessarily be something that comes across very clearly. So with this brief introduction, I would just like to say, my name is Samuel Zalanga, and I used to be working with Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota, but right now I'm in my office in Luther Seminary in St. Paul. I still continue to maintain my Bethel email because I'm a professor emeritus, and since I've been communicating with that email for about 22 years, I just thought I would just keep using it for certain official correspondence. So that's just what I want to say about myself. And with this, let's go around and each introduce ourselves, and then we will proceed from there. So who would like to go first?
Well, I can go.
Okay. Well,
Moses Ochonu. I come to you from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. As you can see from the ambience in the background, I'm in Nigeria, so I'm home. So, but I was drawn to Wariboko scholarship because of its range and its depth, and also because of its extraordinary ambition. It is very rare that one encounters someone whose scholarship reaches across the disciplines, from theology to economics to philosophy to social theory and to history and so on and so forth. So, you know, when the issue came up in the LSA as to volunteering on and author meets critics panels, I immediately, you know, jumped on that opportunity to say, yes, I want to participate in this panel. So I'm looking forward to the conversations that we're about to have. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening from Nigeria. I'm Enoch Olujide Badegeshi. I teach at Obafemi University at the Department of Religious Studies. Yes, I think I knew Professor Wariboko. It's been a lot of time now. When I was doing my second master at Harvard, that's when I got to know him. And then at that time, I was able to read quite a number of his journals, articles, and then his books. I have 2 of his books on my shelf in Nigeria here, Pentecostal Principle and the other one, which is Far From Me Now. I've read quite a number of his books online. And I'm so glad that I could have opportunity to read this one too. It's highly loaded with ideas. I know he's a great thinker, and I'm happy to be part of people that are going to share in this conversation this evening. The other side of Professor Wariboko is also a pastor and African evangelist. I think it reflects in his book too. It might not reveal that overtly, but at least I could see that sense when I was reading his book. So I'm looking forward to great conversation this evening. Thank you very much.
My name is Simeon Iles. I hope I'm not muted.
No, we are hearing you.
Oh, okay. As you can see, I'm in a vehicle. I told Professor Wariboko that I wasn't sure if I'll be able to join today because I had planned to travel with my family to Indiana. We left North Carolina about 6:30 this morning. So I'm parked by the road. Actually, I'm at a gas station somewhere in Ohio. So, and I'm glad that the connection is good. So I hope that the connection will remain strong throughout the duration of this session. I've known Professor Wariboko for a long time, and he and I belong to so many guilds together, and I respect him a lot as a brother and a scholar. And it's also a pleasure to meet other colleagues here. Professor Moses Ochono, he and I have communicated. We have actually not met in person. So it's a pleasure to be on a panel with him. And hello to other colleagues, Dr. Gbade, Professor Zalanga. And I'm just happy that I'm able to join you on this. It's afternoon here, it's evening in Nigeria. I don't know where else other people are, but it's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Priska Gobu, University of Port Harcourt. I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to be a part of this panel. I first read one of Professor Wariboko's books, I think in the year 2020. Actually, I read the first time before 2020, and somehow I couldn't comprehend it. Yeah, I read it in a hurry. So in 2020, I had a chance to read it again. I was so intrigued by the depth of research in the book. I got curious and I had to Google him to know more about this scholar who did this kind of deep and thought-provoking research. And so I Googled him, got to know 2 things about. Somehow, I was able to get to know him. I've read a lot of his books so far. So I'm happy to be here, and I feel it's a great privilege to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We still have, should we wait or should we? I don't know. What do you think, Professor Wariboko? Do you want to introduce yourself now or do we wait until when you come to?
Well, I can. My name is Nimi Wariboko. I teach at Boston University in the United States. Okay, so I greet and welcome everyone to the panel.
Okay. Okay. Now we will proceed to the next part of this panel discussion, and this is the time when all the panelists will go around and summarize or present whatever they wrote. And I think because of the situation of Simeon, we will have him go first because of his circumstances, given the fact that he's driving and maybe there may be some problem with the internet connection somewhere. So I apologize because I sent you a list based on the way it is in the program, but now we're going to just change it a little bit and go first with Simeon, and then from there we'll just go back to the list as it is. So Simeon, can you proceed? I think you can take up to maybe between 8 and 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. And I had sent my reflections to Professor Wariboko and Professor Zalanga, and I'm not going to read it. As he could tell from my reflections, my focus in my response to his excellent book is actually to raise some theoretical issues. So, and I'm going to bypass those issues to go to some of the practical issues that the book raises, or that I understand the book to be raising, which I actually did not expatiate in my theoretical reflection. The first is the nature of destiny itself. And the good thing, what I understand the book is to be saying is that religion supplies us with a language with which to understand ourselves and our society. And of course, in African religious worldview, Professor Wariboko is focusing specifically on a particular subgroup, which is the Kalabari people. So the notion of destiny or belief in destiny is well entrenched in African thinking. And of course, the idea is that people do not come into the world by chance. Their existence actually preceded their arrival in the world. And part of what that entails is that their life program or their life world has been written for them before they arrive in the world. However, history provides the context or the laboratory within which the nature of one's existence, one's life courses will unfold. So, and of course, Wariboko raises the issue of ignorance, the fact that when one arrives in the world, one doesn't know exactly what one has desired pre-existence. And one will then have to test or take certain practical steps to be able to discover what indeed one had chosen before one arrived in the world. That, as it may be, as far as I understand his argument, I think that would be a good way to understand individual life. The question that I will raise for Professor Wariboko is, does this also enable us to understand collective destiny? If we use the language of destiny, which makes sense in the context of individual life, to analogize to African society, whether Nigeria or the whole of Africa as a whole, how do we periodize, or where do we begin to understand the destiny of Africa? Is it pre-colonial? Is it colonial? Is it post-colonial? So how did the African people as a collectivity choose their pre-existence destiny, number one? And secondly, within which historical framework or context do we seek to figure out as a people what we had previously chosen? So I think there is a tension between destiny as a metaphor for understanding individual life course, and destiny as a metaphor for understanding the life course of a collectivity. That is one theoretical issue or practical issue that I see in the book. And I also want to extend the same question or query to the language of desire too. So do we understand desire in the singular, or do we understand desire in the plural? Again, if we use desire as the language of desire as a metaphor for understanding what we prefer as individuals, in the context of a society, especially in Nigeria, where it is a very pluralistic society, and this plurality exists along several axes, whether ethnicity, whether region, whether class, whether region. So desire cannot be understood or at least explained in a singular sense. It has to be in the plural. So whose desire or desires then counts as a basis for understanding the program of human flourishing? So that's another question that I think will need to be raised, or at least addressed. There is a secondary aspect of that question, which is the conflict of desire. Because if desire is explained in the plural sense, then definitely, unless there is a collective consensus as to what we should all desire, there is bound to be conflict of desires. What are the criteria by which we adjudicate the tension or the conflict among those conflicting desires? Again, realizing the sociological plurality of the society, many African societies, and desire, of course, is going to be problematic again as a basis for defining an agenda for a people. And that then leads to the issue of flourishing. I hinted at this again in my reflection, but I didn't really develop the argument, which is, what does it really mean to flourish? Does flourishing entail or mean, as we say in the Nigerian speak, I have arrived? Is that how we should understand flourishing? That is flourishing as an attainment or actualization of individual preferences, regardless of the moral credibility of whatever it is individuals regard as their form of or mode of flourishing. Or should we understand flourishing in the collective sense, which is what I understand the book to be saying, that is flourishing to point us towards common good. But then if we use the language of common good to unfold the meaning of flourishing as used in the book, then where does that, how does that benefit individual ambition, or how do individuals figure in the context of collective flourishing? So there is, again, the need to parcel out or to adjudicate or mediate the potential tension between collective flourishing and individual flourishing. Of course, the book itself is focused on economic flourishing, and there are different material components of what it means to flourish economically. However, I also think it's important, while we are on this practical aspect of the book's argument, that there is no way you can have a flourishing economy without a conducive political context. And so if the political environment doesn't conduce to economic flourishing, then is there a way, can a society prosper economically speaking if that society is asphyxiated politically speaking? Of course, anyone who is familiar with Professor Wariboko's book will understand that he has addressed the political question in other books. So, and one has to read his work as a collective to be able to understand that one argument actually leads to the other. But my point is that economic flourishing cannot be understood in isolation. outside the context of political environment. So these are the three main issues or three main questions that that I would like to put before Professor Wariboko. None of these questions was actually raised in my paper, which I hope he has read, but I think for purposes of this conversation, it will make more sense to raise this rather than reading my paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm glad that you have been able to say whatever you want to say for now, even though you're on your way. So now that you've made your presentation, we'll go back to the schedule as it is. So Enoch would go next, and then after him, then Priska.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to especially thank the organizer of this program, considering me to be part of this panel. And then I want to especially thank the author of this book, Professor Wariboko. Like I said in my introduction, he said that I know he's a great thinker, and like our dearly beloved Professor Gobo said, first time I read Professor Wariboko's book, I had to read it about 5 times before I could grasp what he was trying to say. I know he's glossy and is highly engrossed in continental philosophy and the rest of it, and I appreciate that. Good enough that I'm able to grab this one. For the first time I got hold of it, I had to read chapter 1 and 2, introduction chapter 1 and 2, about 3 times before I was able to make sense of what he was trying to say. And like Professor Ilesami said, I think I like the way he talked about destiny and talk about desire. Most of the issues I would have raised has been raised by Professor Ilesami, but let me go into the idea of time. I like the way he talked about time. If I understood him very well, time is fluid, time is not graspable, time is something that is always eluding us. You cannot go back in time to say this, and then you cannot even, there's no way you can, time is always conditioning the way, if I understood him well, time is always conditioning the way we respond in our ontology, or how we respond to situation around us, how we respond to challenges, and how we respond to things that try to face us. Now, he talked about time as something that has to be cracked into or break into. Time is not something that we wait for you. You are the one to make that time happen. And the only way you can make that time happen is to break free of what has been erected. Let me say, maybe societal, a kind of hindrance. Let me use that word. A kind of hindrance that may have been erected by the society. This idea of individualism, communitarianism, and the rest of them, that the society has already put in place that this is how you must be conditioned, this is how you must work. I try to see Budil repeating itself through Wariboko's work. Budil, we talk about individual breaking free of societal entanglement or something like that. Now, when I was reading, I was looking for how I could see Heidegger, time and being, but I couldn't see that. I don't know whether it's deliberate or maybe he was interested in that. I was, even if he's not going to use it to problematize his work, I was thinking that he was going to make a brief reference to Heideggerian ontology and the time and being and not the rest of that. But I couldn't see that. I raised that as part of my reaction to his work when I sent the one I sent to Professor Langa and maybe forwarded to him. Then the issue of individualism and communitarianism, although I think he has explained that when he started his book, that because of, I will not say lack of knowledge of other society or traditions, he talks so much about Kalabari as if Kalabari has a unique way of doing things different from other African way of, I know African generally is not homogeneous, but by the time I was reading it, I said, oh, this one is not different. The issue of destiny is not different from the way Yoruba will think. I'm happy that Professor Lesam is here. He can take me up on that if I'm wrong. Yoruba, you don't know where you are. But one thing is that there is something Yoruba believe that happened in the heavenly realm. Let me use that word, heavenly realm, or in the world beyond. You go to pick your lot or your destiny. You go and pick it. Or you kneel down and accept it. Or you, there's something we say, kneeling to pick, or either standing to receive or something like that. But it's when you now get to the world, you now begin to think about, oh, maybe the Lord have chosen. There is this idea of fatalism or determinism or something like that. But a time comes when you now realize that my lot is so good. Then you can now branch to either Pentecostalism or branch to a priest, which he actually mentioned a lot. You branch to a priest who is going to actually change your lot. Now, if that lot is changed, then you can now begin to perform. You can now begin to move forward in life, if it is possible at the end of the day. Now, there is something they say in Yoruba. They say, what you need down to pick is what you meet in this world. But when you get to the world, instead of waiting for your lot to manifest, you start to rush. But you see, if we go by that kind of philosophy or way of thinking in Yoruba, then that might betray Wariboko's book. Wariboko is suggesting that you don't wait for that law to come. You have to make it happen. You have to break into that time, and it's that time that we condition the way. The whole world itself is temporal. It's not stable, and then the time itself is not stable. So you have to actually continue to make things happen at all times. Then I also raised another issue about the issue of individualism and communitarianism. Wariboko thinks that African social ethicists, which he refused to mention, I found it difficult that when I was reading, I couldn't. Maybe he's afraid of them. Many of them have died. I don't know why he's afraid of them. So he didn't want to mention African social ethicists that he was criticizing. But I now raised an issue. I say it's only McKinsey. If I've read enough books, maybe I've not read as much as you people there. Now, McKinsey, I know that he went overboard by celebrating community, fascious, overrated community above individualism. But this man, what's his name again? I think I'm coming. I have it here. What's his name now? Sorry about that. This Ghanaian philosopher. What should I forget?
Wiredu.
Is it Wiredu? Actually,
no, Gekeye. I don't know how to pronounce it. Gekeye or something.
Gekeye. Yeah, I think Gekeye was one that took McKinsey up, and he said, no, African has not always been thinking like that. African don't overshadow individual movement or individual ideas or individual propensity to move forward. African doesn't do that. Individual people, and I raised that issue too, that in Yoruba that I know, if the community has been overshadowing individuals, then we are not going to see people like Otedola, we're not going to see people like Alakija, we're not going to see people like all these kind of people that are moving forward and are actually exerting influence in the community today, and nobody is stopping them from becoming what they want to become. Then the idea, let me raise the third issue and then I keep my mouth shut. Now, the idea of being and becoming, I like that we are always in the process of becoming. We are not a fixed entity. We are not a complete being. In fact, Peter Bogga was one that said the only creation that was not, or creature that was not complete at creation is human being. That we are always recreating ourselves and remaking ourselves to change things around us. Things may change us, and we're going to change. We're going to, there's this kind of a kind of paradox of I am remade, or I make things and I'm remade in the process of making things to happen. So I think let me just say last thing, and then I keep my mouth shut. Maybe other time I will have some other thing to say. Now, I said that issue of desire. How does desire or how is desire giving battle? That's exactly what I want to say. How is it giving battle? How is it giving battle? How do we now the way we there's a way where in which we are raised in one kind of way. Now you want to desire something, and then you see that you are always in economic terms. We are always confronted with different types of looking for things to satisfy ourselves. And human life is insatiable. We are insatiable. How do we bring these kind of desires, that different kind of desires? How do we bring them into a singular way of desire that we actually bring about human flourishing? Let me keep my mouth shut here before I continue later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we'll now proceed to the third presentation, and that would be by Priska from Port Harcourt. We cannot hear you. Yeah, okay.
Thank you once again for having me here. I submitted a full paper to the chair of the panel, but here I have a summary, a very brief summary of the full submitted, and I would like to just read through it quickly. And the concept of Tumbo so, let a person become a person in Wariboko's display time, philosophy for flourishing and perspective. The introduction is this. In Nimi Wariboko's 2022 split time, economic philosophy for human flourishing in African perspective, the concept of Tumbo so, let a person become a person. That's what Tumbo so means. The concept of Tumbo so, let a person become a person, is central to the theme. In this book, the author offers compelling and creative insights for the economic development of Africa by crafting an indigenous economic philosophy, Africa, rooted in African traditional religion, ATR. This is a book on economic philosophy that utilizes the 4 key concepts of destiny, desire, temporality, and flourishing within the Calabari traditional religion to expose and explore the principle of economic development theory. The author raises some important questions regarding the split nature of order of destiny, or the destiny of order in Calabari, which he argues and produce economic development for Africa, as he describes the notions, ideas, terms, theories, and practices inherent in traditional religion. I have chosen one of the many brilliant ideas that through the entire book, among others, which is Tumbo so, let a person become a person. This paper demonstrates and illustrates the standards that govern of human makes a person become a person in the time gap as described by through the 6 chapters of the The author painstakingly brought to the fore what is required for an individual to become a person, engages traditional concepts in each chapter of the book to demonstrate how to be a person. The major preoccupation of an individual, time gap, is all about a man standing out and standing up for himself, his community, to ensure human flourishing. And this is demonstrated and explained in this book from acknowledgement page through the introduction to the 6 chapters of through Fiatable, which is destiny, Bibara, the process of the revocation, after Bibara, when the person uses her imaginative vision to create the future she wants. Destiny, time, desire, and flourishing, the drive for excellence, drive for legacy, and enacting privilege, agonistic materialism, and even the drive for freedom. At the root of all this is standing out and standing up as a man for self and community. The author sees economic development as an outcome of decisions and human actions. He emphasized that the individual has a duty to search and opportunities that will generate a flourishing, even if it means renegotiating and revoking destiny from Fiatable to Bibara, which is similar to what Jabez did in the Bible when he called on the to change his destiny, and God granted his request. And if the process of Bibara does not create the desired result, she still has the option of after Bibara, which requires her to create the level of success she wants in her future through the power of imagination. Becoming a person is thus a moral imperative. It is deemed immoral to do and actualize what one is essentially capable of doing. By engaging the concept of a person becomes. In chapter 1, also argues that for economic ethics to adequately recognize the piece of desire, temporal structure of desire, any community's account of human action, it must work to privilege a part, every member of the community. Noted that privileging a part speaks to the logic of differentiation and differential that every individual needs in order to move towards self-fulfillment and human flourishing at their own pace within the context of a community that puts a premium, dignity, equality. The author dives deeper into his analysis by reiterating that a person's flourishing depends on her ability to pursue, attain, and sustain her soul. This is lowercase soul, which means destiny. The telos is a conception of a promise of flourishing life, a person into her. It is thus the governing force that will bring her into view, building her life. In the Calabari worldview and philosophy, the word soul refers to destiny, also means good, which is uppercase soul. When soul is applied to individuals, it is called soul. To household, it is waritemeso, and to communities, it is amatemeso. Both the essential and conditional components of human life are divinely to function for individual and collective flourishing. The fact is that the individual and the community are intertwined. They stand or fall together. One cannot flourish without it. This is exemplified through human work, grounded in self-identity, community. Such work is necessary to live for the community. Wariboko insists that work is meaningful when it generates and bequeaths a legacy to community so that the structures of personality and the community's well-being are made sturdier. Wariboko reached back into Calabari Ijaw traditional history, rooted in ATR, to provide solutions to the many problems that bedevil contemporary Nigeria. History affords us the opportunity to see things in hindsight and gain foresight to avoid force of the past. And that is how history better serves the present and the future. His style of writing is fluid, seamless, engaging, radical, and thought-provoking, with the ability to get the reader immersed in its rich content, as one chapter floats easily to. The author awakens a historical consciousness by explicitly engaging the reader in a more robust conversation on the traditional resources embedded in ATR through his chosen methodology, chart a new effect for Nigeria and Nigerians, if only to educate themselves in the knowledge group. ATR was and is an integral part of the culture. That it did not work in the past does not mean that it cannot work. It will certainly work in Nigeria and by extension Africa. Circumstance and leadership. Africa. These traditional resources utilized for the greater, but for the tribal factors to work, to require many subjects who have what it takes to upturn the and social conditions and create the future they seek. This in turn could be achieved through intensive education. Education gets more education. Conclusion. The author of this book is transdisciplinary in scholarship, and through the multidisciplinary approach of research methodology, he gathered his facts, subjected these facts to rigorous analysis and interpretation while drawing richly from his Calabari, Ijor, and transdisciplinary background to give a more robust interpretation of economics. Able to discuss the finer intricacies of his thesis easily across history, regions, and disciplines so effortlessly, the remarkable grasp of his subject matter. His ideas in this book are provocative, creative, fresh, inspiring, intellectually stimulating, and rewarding. Indeed, this book does not fill gaps. Rather, it opens up gaps in our comprehension of the subject matter. The author has demonstrated that the resources needed for African advancement are within Africa. So it is time to stop looking elsewhere for salvation and look within African indigenous tradition. However, those with the mindset of becoming a person will find the right tools for their pursuit of human flourishing for themselves and their communities in this book. The full life of a man or woman, just like that of society and state, comprises perspectives from three focal points: present, past, and future. And that is a fact that must be embraced. Despite the years of slave trade and colonialism in Africa, life is in seasons and people manifest in seasons. Therefore, this could be the season to stop colonialism, African economic backwards, go beyond individual success and boost capacity, competence, and capital to improve the value chain, collective success, the entire society. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we'll now move to the next presentation. I'm looking at time because we have to give special time to Professor Wariboko to respond, and then the audience, members of the audience. So now we'll go to the last but not the least presentation, which is from Professor Ochun.
Yes, thank you, Samuel. So for me, I really enjoyed this work because it stimulated a lot of thinking. I want to thank Professor Wariboko for giving us a window into this, a profound window, I should say, into this ontological world of the Kalabari people. In providing this way of thinking about destiny, explaining it to us in this way, he takes on earlier conceptions of destiny in the Kalabari world. He critiques it, he challenges it, He also challenges dominant interpretation of destiny that has come out of all the scholarship, rather than seeing destiny as a linear process, he sees destiny in this Calabari system as a negotiable in this system. Destiny is changeable, but such change and negotiability results from individual choices and desires. This already marks this book out as a unique and profoundly interventionist work, because it helps us to see a different notion of destiny than the one that we're used to seeing in scholarship, in African scholarship on religion or economics or philosophy. The other contribution for me in this book is that Wariboko does not stop there. He makes the case for after Bibibari, which is the idea that destiny is negotiable, that destiny itself unfolds along the arc, and for the most part is determined by human agency. But he doesn't stop there. He forges an unlikely connection between this Calabari ontological perspective on destiny and the ideas of human flourishing and what it means to flourish and to live the good life, and so on and so forth. What we social scientists like to fancifully call development. So for me, this is the most profound and most insightful contribution of the work. This nexus of Calabari notions of destiny as something that is fluid and something that can be influenced in certain trajectories, and questions and debates about development in Africa. This is an ambitious book. Wariboko is essentially urging us to draw from the Calabari ontological system as a rich repository and repertoire of development language, development discourse. He wants us to draw from this philosophical notion of destiny to enrich our developmental discursive dictionary and vocabulary. In much of the literature on African development and economic struggles, religious ideas are often advanced as things that hold back economic development, that hold back or complicate human flourishing. Sometimes, they are posited as philosophies that compete with ideas and ideologies of human development or human flourishing. What I like about this book is that Wariboko rejects this unconvincing dichotomy. How does he do that? He analytically demonstrates these two domains as complementary and as having this catalytic relationship, right? Wariboko analyzes these two domains as conjoined realms of human action. He calls this realm ontological creative act. He doesn't see a dichotomy, he doesn't see a tension. He's
Oh, is he frozen?
complementary. In other words, religious ideas such as the one that he explores in this book enrich debate around questions of development and human. Here, other scholars see ATL to be a drag on African development. Wariboko sees the Calabari system as a rich philosophical minefield for extracting actionable ideas on questions of development. More importantly, he sees the Calabari ATL conception on destiny as something that enables us to see humans, especially Africans, as agents in the making of their own life courses, in the making of their own economic destiny. This work posits, let me go into one area in which I think this book really makes a huge contribution. I don't know if Professor Wariboko self-consciously, conceived this book in this way. But one thing that I got from it is that it intervenes in the age-old debate on structure and agency. Often what you find is that religious ideas, belief systems, and faith are put in the same category as economic ideologies. In other words, they are structures that impede and complicate and constrain human agency and human action, right? So they are put in that category, and then agency is put in a different box altogether, a different category. What Professor Wariboko does in this work is to posit human agency as a catalyst of structure and vice versa. In other words, humans can intervene in some of these structural givings and alter them and alter their courses. And on the other hand, structures, whether they are belief systems like the Kalabari one that he explores, or whether they are economic ideologies, they can also constrain and complicate human agency. For me, it is very insightful the way he deals with this intertwinement of structure and agency. Yeah, I think this is a very insightful philosophical intervention in this book. Another contribution that I see here goes back to what Professor Ilesomi was talking about, raises this question of collective agency, or collective destiny, rather, and individual destiny. It does raise that tension. I do agree with Professor Ilesomi. But unlike Professor Ilesomi, I actually think that the book resolves that tension, resolves that contradiction. Because what I see Professor Wariboko doing here is that he is arguing and I see it on page 8. If you go to page 8, there's a quote that encapsulates this point brilliantly. And let me read the quote short briefly. Let me just read it quickly. To think of destiny in relation to economic development is to think of how a society can create the social imagination and capabilities that can enable persons to be all that they can be and contribute to the betterment of their community. So what I see Professor Wariboko doing here is connecting individual destiny to collective destiny, and looking at them as in terms of the symbiotic interaction between individual and collective destiny. One does not exist without the other, and they inform each other. Collective destiny flows and impacts individual destiny. Individual destiny, on the other hand, also impacts collective destiny. If collective destiny is resolved, it equips the individual with the tools, with the resources to contribute, to be all that they can be, to be the best version of themselves, but also to contribute to the collective destiny of whichever community they belong to. I want to also comment on another contribution that has not been highlighted shortly, and this has to do with the this economic, this whole, there's in economics, there's this debate about economic expectations. This question of how do people, set economic expectations? How do they manage risk? How do they manage uncertainties in the future? And it varies from culture to culture. I think that Wariboko intervenes, maybe without even realizing it, in this debate. Intervenes forcefully in this debate, in the sense that he argues that BB can be an effective risk management tool if scaled up, if adopted in a larger African template. It can be a tool for managing uncertainty, for managing future risks, and for resolving some of the unknowns, basically, in our way of thinking about our futures. Nowadays, there's a whole lot of scholarship on African futures. What Wariboko is saying here is that the Ribari can help us to look towards the future with more clarity, with more certainty, and to help us to set economic expectations. So I think it's a fantastic contribution to that literature. So I want to end my reflections by posing a few questions that I've already articulated in the stuff that I sent to Professor Zalanga earlier. One of them is the question of scalability. How scalable is this philosophy, this philosophical treatise, Calabaris on destiny? You know, and I ask this question because usually when scholars have this, they proceed this type of sweeping, ambitious extrapolation from a body of philosophical thought. Usually, it's usually a microcosm of a larger reality, social reality or philosophical reality. In this case, this exploration is built, this analysis is built on an exception. In other words, the Calabari system is an exception. It departs, according to the author, from most other African treatises on destiny. So the question of whether you can, how applicable is this, especially since he's recommending this as in a prescriptive manner, that basically he's basically telling us to adopt this as an African developmental thinking, as a new African. So therefore, the scalability of it, the applicability of it across the continent. Can we build this type of sweeping prescriptive edifice on an exception? Okay. The other question that I had is, why precisely should we adopt, you know, this Calabari system across Africa? Is it because the Calabari's religious semiotic on destiny should we adopt it precisely because it is different and deviates from other ways and other ideas of on destiny in African traditional religions? Should we adopt it because other interventions and other ideas on destiny have failed the continent, have failed to inspire or anchor a sustainable continental developmental trajectory? Is that why he is recommending Bibi Bari, after Bibi Bari rather, as an alternative developmental system? Or finally, should we adopt it because it is more compatible with the economic programs and initiatives being implemented in different African countries? I want Professor Wariboko to clarify this. Another question that comes to mind is, you know, I agree with him that previous interpretation of this Calabari treatise on destiny were problematic, and he challenges those interpretations in the book and comes up with an entirely new interpretation that allows for, that disavows fixity and rigidity and allows for malleability and change and so on and so forth. But my question to him is, does this foreclose other plausible interpretive possibilities? Are there other ways in which this philosophical system of the Calabari people can be interpreted that would be plausible and tenable and convincing and philosophically correct, all right? And finally, I want to thank him for giving us additional tools to take a fresher look at other ethnic, religious philosophies and treatises on this question of destiny. Is it possible from his vantage point that given the eye-opening, you know, other ATR ideologies on destiny and human life courses too narrowly and perhaps even incorrectly, thereby missing their more rational and agentic dimensions? That's a question I want to leave with him. A question that I think he might choose to explore in the subsequent work, given how productive and fecund he is. He's probably already thinking about a sequel to this book. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before Professor Wariboko responds, I would just like to make one comment because I don't think there's time. We're already running out of time and we need to give members of the audience time to ask questions too after he respond to what other people have said. I think for me, some weeks ago or about 2 months ago, I attended a forum, it is a colloquium on virtue and economic thinking. And I think what came to my mind reading that book is this general idea that there are people who tend to think about economics, but not necessarily aligning it with virtue. And part of the way he discussed the traditional religion of the Kalabari people can be considered as bringing virtue into economic thinking. We cannot have economic thinking that is going to be sustainable if there's no virtue in it. This is very, very important. But the other thing that I thought is quite interesting, and this book raises, is how sometimes you need virtues, like the one he highlighted in the book, in order for you to flourish. But sometimes when these virtues are so successful, they make you become developed, then that development undermines, turns around and undermines some of those virtues. So I noticed some tension in the study of economics, and I think he brings this out very, very clearly. And I noticed that among the Puritans, there are some people in this country who have raised this question that Christianity came and gave birth to prosperity in America, by which they meant capitalism, but capitalism turned around and committed matricide. Edmund Burke himself, when he talked about India or Britain, he's a conservative, but he also says that capitalism sometimes, when it is successful, undermines the family. Okay, and then you have Herbert Marcuse equally talking about repressive desublimation, that we want economic development in such a way, the way it is conceptualized today, which his book is a critique of, that is this idea that you have the freedom to do this and that. But he said this freedom that people are pursuing, often when they pursue it, it becomes like they are pursuing certain kind of desires, they become consumers, and they get into debt and all those kind of things. So you see the tension there. So I think one of the things that I really appreciate about this book, and I think several of you have made comments about it, is the relationship between religion and the market in general. Okay, I always say that for those that are Christians, the market is as evangelical Christianity, only that the content of the evangelism is different. Okay. For the market to succeed, it has to capture your mind, it has to capture your desire, it has to capture your sense of social imagination and all those kind of things if you study it very carefully. Now, similarly, any religion, if it is going to succeed, it will also need to capture your imagination and transform you. If we were pretty sure the imagination, the transformation of the market and the transformation of religion are the same, oh my God, we will just celebrate because we can just be in the market and be transformed. But unfortunately, this is not necessarily the case. So I think this book, by raising this question, really brings a very important issue that we may not be able to have the time to discuss. So with this, let's hand over the discussion to Professor Wariboko.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I think I was allotted few minutes to speak, but I don't think I will take that much time anymore. So let me begin by thanking the panelists and the chair for their work, Professors Samuel Zeliga, Catherine Pipe, Priska Gobo, Simeon, Elesemi, Moses, Oshoni, and Enoch Badagesin. I say thank you to all. Your brilliant and careful reading of the book have educated me about the book itself. Each of you have raised serious questions, offered perspectives, and pushed the arguments of the book further. I stand in your debt. Special thanks to Professor Said Adericha, the president of LSA, who took it upon himself to organize this panel. I really want to thank him. But let me start by giving a summary of the book, what I was trying to do, and if there's time, I may respond to all the questions. So the split time is specifically devoted to crafting a socioeconomic theory of development in the light of the philosophical ideas embedded in traditional African religions. The ideas, practice, and institutions that were retrieved from historical Kalabari indigenous sources, and then the body of thought that went into explaining, defending, and applying them to Nigeria's present quest to overcome its economic predicament constitute a notable contribution of African traditional religion to development studies. African traditional religion, instead of Christianity of Islam, is used to undergive the economic philosophical constructive task in the book. I made the deliberate choice to formulate the critical theoretical discourse of economic development in the book only through the perspective of African traditional religions, subjecting economic theory to a specifically ATR reformulation. This was a conscious effort to develop an economic philosophy or craft socioeconomic theory under the rubric of African traditional religion. I demonstrate in this book that there is a proper conceptualization of ATR that makes it indispensable to a rigorous analysis of religious and philosophical ideas as they intersect with economic development studies in Nigeria. African traditional religion engages, confronts, or critiques economic development or neoclassical economies. The book, deeply informed by indigenous philosophy and history, is an inquiry into what kind of social transformation will be required for Nigeria's national economy to strive. Here, to strive carries the meaning of how the nation's economic time, talent, and treasure can be worked out to coexist most rewardingly to enable Nigerians to live with one another to promote their common good. The meaning of strife goes beyond economic growth to include human flourishing, and in this way, it challenges the focus of neoclassical economic thought and its emphasis on mere technical processes of growth. The book points to the ethical, ethological dimension of the economic processes of national life. In the book, I systematically analyze 6 key elements in Kalabari Ijaw philosophy that amply address the economic processes of Nigeria's national life. These are time, destiny, desire, community, individualism, and human flourishing. Essentially, this book offers a radical economic interpretation of history, worldview, and philosophy that generates fresh insights into the developmental potentials of Nigeria's pre-colonial cultural institutions. Its method is based on the rediscovery of the practices and principles of emancipatory economies and a retrieval of fundamental orientations to human coexistence that go to the core of the functioning of economies bent towards human flourishing. This study builds up economic philosophy from a place of indigeneity. Now to the specific questions and issues raised. I try to put the different questions raised into different categories rather than going by author. So I said the first question is the Kalabari model scalable or applicable to other societies? Professor Pipe, Oshonu, and Elesemi asked various forms of this question. Oshonu asks, how scalable is the Kalabari case, both as an ontological point of reference and as an actionable philosophy of developmental human action? Pipe's concern derived from a contention that the Kalabari notion of dynamic or changeable destiny is almost unique in Africa. Elesemi questions the applicability of the book's insight beyond their immediate cultural provenances. These 3 scholars argue that the Kalabari view of destiny and philosophy of time I explained in the book do not fit with the notions of destiny and time in other African societies. Thus, they question if the philosophy of economic development I have extracted from Kalabari will work for other African societies. I have a simple response. If other African economies find the Kalabari philosophy of economic development relevant and good for them, then one will expect them to accommodate it by making the necessary changes in their philosophy and practices. The existential task of defeating poverty on the continent does require policy leaders to search for best practices for their nations. Does Oshonu not answer the fundamental question Pipe, Elesemi, and him have asked when he stated that, and I quote, Kalabari ATM philosophy of destiny is more compatible with the economic programs and initiatives dominating developmental visions that are being implemented across Africa, unquote. The dynamic character of Kalabari notion of destiny makes it relevant for a time of economic development such as today. I do not think that any political leader or minister of finance in any African country who thinks that human beings are locked into fixed destinies and do not have the agency to alter their positions is serious about economic development. If there are still leaders like that, we need to nudge them to learn from the Kalabari model. Of course, I'm aware that there are leaders who are stuck in their ways of thinking and will block the implementation of the ideas contained in the split time. It is important that as scholars, we endeavor to develop alternative framework for Africa's economic development, even if present political, sociological, and economic realities block its immediate implementation. The imaginative framework provided by the split time suggests, at the minimum, that the values of indigenous economic philosophies serve as alternative ideology to the current policy regime that are threatening the moral order of many African nations. And thus, it serves as a critique of the current economic development thought. Having said this, I would like to add that Dr. Badagessin's essay arguably offers a response to the concerns of Oceanu, Pipe, and Elesemi. He does not think that the Calabari philosophical notions are unique or of a limited applicability or scalability across Africa. For instance, he argues that the Calabari ideas of economic development are not radically different from that of the Yoruba. His stance called for comparative studies that can excavate the indigenous resources for thinking and implementing economic development in Africa. The second question, or the second issue raises, is the Calabari notion of destiny really flexible? Oceanu asked this question, and my answer is yes. Where Calabari have the notion of Fieteboe, they also have Bebe Bari. In the book, I demonstrated this repeatedly. The resistance to the Calabari notion might have arisen because many scholars thought that all African communities conceptualize destiny in the same way? Or should it be that in many cases, our scholars have misinterpreted the data of African communities? Oceanu put it well when he asks, is it possible that we have read other ATR ideologies on destiny and human life courses too narrowly and perhaps falsely, thereby missing their more rational agentic dimension? My answer is that in many cases, we have read the data narrowly. And the third issue is structure and agency. While Oceanu highlights the unique philosophical clarity split time brings to the age-old debate on structure and agency, Professor Priska Gobo demonstrates how the Calabari quest for turning every person to become the kind of person they ought to be illustrates how agency and structure are intertwined in enabling individuals to be the best that they can be. She traces the philosophical idea of Tombo Tombo So, let a person become a person, through the intricacies and complexities of Calabari Ijaw philosophy. The compliments Professor Oceanu paid to me for transcending the binary of agency and structure in the split time could easily be transferred to a discourse on Tombo Tombo So. Following Oceanu, I can say that as Gobo was excavating the individualist dimension of economic development, she was dissolving the binary between agency and ideational structure, emphasizing, and I quote, the malleability and possibility of humans intervening to change the trajectory of preordained processes. I appreciate Oceanu's and Gobo's effort in highlighting this dimension of the book. While writing the book, the point about structure and agency was not obvious to me. I was only trying to tell the Calabari story as faithfully as I could. The fourth issue is the unexpected in economic development. Dr. Pipe also argues that my idea of allowing an economy to initiate something new, but unexpected to happen, does not fit with the logic of human flourishing. And my response? No economy can survive and prosper for a long time without innovation and invention. Any economy that closes itself to innovation or to the novum will eventually die or be unable to sustain reasonable levels of human flourishing for its citizens. Now to the question of the content of desire. That is the fifth issue that came up. Professor Simon Elesemi argues that I either assume the moral desirability of the content of desire, or I did not make clear the content of desire in the book. My discussion of the desire was formal, meaning I was laying out the form of desire and not the substance of it. I did not have any content of desire to make clear. I left it for individual community to decide on the content of their desire. That is part of the pluralistic process. Societies have to come together and decide through the political process what kind of desire and how they need to inform it. But in Calabari philosophy, the desire is actually formal. It means there is a gap between what you have now and what you attend to be. So that formal gap is what the desire is about. In the same way Lacan thought about it in his psychoanalysis, or even Hegel, it's not a substantive one, it's a formal one, a form which societies have to feel or define as this define fit. The sixth concern is religion as the sole criteria of valid social criticism. Professor Lesami stated that I made religion the sole criterion of social criticism. I did not do this. The principle of evaluation of economic development is human flourishing. The notion of human flourishing is not necessarily religious. More specifically, see my discussion of monetary and work policies in chapter 5 of the book, and you will discover that religious sentiments do not play a role in certain policies. Having said this, I want to clarify what the book is doing with African traditional religion. It resorts to ATRO not to mine religious sentiments, particularities, or obscurantism for a pluralistic nation like Nigeria, but to use it as a source for philosophical ideas. We should note that what we've named as ATRO is not a mere depository of religious ideas, but also a matrix of philosophy, social ethics, and economic ideas, just to name a few disciplines. ATRO is a vast archive of knowledge. Identify relevant ideas from ATRO, polish them, and elevate them to philosophical and economic theoretical discussion. I made it clear in the preface of the book that the concepts and notions excavated from Calabari ATRO are recast as materialist social theories, so not as religious concepts which we can impose on the public. Number 7, does my account of human flourishing ignore emotive states? This is also an issue raised by Professor Lesami in his paper, in his brilliant paper. I said, no, I discussed this throughout the book. I will refer Professor Lesami to the notion of the lotus self in pages 128 to 130 that addresses what he calls the deficit of the reactive attitude of indignation and guilt concerning human suffering. I really showed that we can't really talk about human flourishing if you're not in touch with our attitude. And especially in my earlier book on ethics and society, I've named that a particular self that is dangerous is the idea of the lotus self. We only care about ourselves. Now the 8th question, why is the Niger Delta or Calabari poor if they have such a rich economic philosophy? This issue also came up in the papers of the various writers. I actually addressed this issue again in 192, page 192, 191 to 192. Yeah, so the question is, if the Calabaris have this such great economic philosophy, or the Niger Delta, why are they poor? I addressed this issue, and this is something that preoccupied me from my first book on management history of the Calabari in 1997. I've been thinking about that, but the issue is, for the fact that today people are poor, for the fact that today things are not going well, does not mean that in the past or within their archives, they don't have ideas that we can exploit. When America 200 years ago decided to retrieve Greek notion of democracy and apply it, the Greeks themselves were not practicing democracy. They've moved on. But it was America that recovered from the Western history that there is a political idea they can use. So in the same way, for the fact that people are poor today, economically poor today, does not mean that they couldn't have had good ideas in the past. And it's our duty as scholars to go back and see what is it that we can retrieve from the past. And finally, there is the issue of ignored Western. Professor Lesami raised the issue that I did not talk about certain Western and Christian debate about the nature of God. Yes, I did not engage the Arius and Athanasius debate on the nature of God in my conception of the sacred. The topic is not relevant for my focus on traditional religion. I was only trying to think within philosophy and theology of African traditional religion. The book is about drawing indigenous concepts from Calabar African traditional religion and not about Western Christian theology. There's a time, a book for that, but the split time is not the right intellectual space for me to engage in the theological debate on the Christian triune God. Thank you. I don't know if there is any more, but I just felt I could fully respond to the issues.
Thank you very much indeed. I don't know, it seems like there are some members in the audience. We have some people listening. So does anyone of them have a question among them? We still have 5 minutes. Among members of the audience, does anybody has a question or comment? Okay, if there's none, let's see whether among,
No.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something quickly in response to the last comments that Professor Wariboko made to second, essentially to second what he said regarding, this idea that the disjuncture between the poverty and the regression in the Niger Delta or among the Kalabari and this rich philosophical archive that they've produced. Why haven't they used this to ameliorate their conditions and so on and so forth? And in my field of history, I'm a historian. Increasingly, there's this new subfield of the history of failed ideas or history of failures, ideas that didn't quite make it into there's this, we try to do with linearity in my field, and what we try to explore increasingly is this idea that the histories of paths not taken, histories of trajectories, and so on and so forth. So society can have a rich body of thought that potentially could serve as a blueprint for all kinds of development projects. But it depends on the unfolding of its history, and the unfolding of history is convoluted, and so it's not linear. And so it's possible that those ideas never got implemented and never became dominant in a particular period, and just laid there in the archive, like Professor Wariboko said, in the ideational archives of that people. So I just wanted to second to say that, to second what he said.
And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I agree with what Professor Chono just said, and I believe I was one of the people who raised that question in my response. And I actually raised the question to agree with what Professor Wariboko is doing in the book, because as I pointed out in my response, he began the book with an acknowledgement of a sense of tragedy or the tragic in the history of the Niger Delta area, and perhaps even of Africa as a whole. So, the paradox is that we have this rich archive of rich ideas, and yet here we are trying to pick up crumbs. So, and the question is, why has that been the case? It's perhaps because we are not familiar or in touch with our ideas, or we don't utilize those ideas. So I raised the question not to criticize the tone or the direction of the book, but to agree with the normative argument of the book itself. So I just want to make that point clear.
Okay, I know we are almost out of time, but I noticed that somebody sent a question. Since the Kalabari People Society have been Christianized for centuries, is there an argument for stating that the ATR Dr. Wariboko investigates is as Christian? So I know we're running out of time, but I just saw the question now. That would have been an interesting.
Well, that's a question maybe the student should answer. Does that mean that every form of ATRO, there's a sense that a lot of, when two religions coexist over centuries, there'll be influences from one to the other. Like for instance, you cannot understand the quest for 9 vigil along the Badan-Lagos Express Road if you don't know that is a borrowing from African traditional religion.
Yeah.
It's a borrowing from African traditional religion, but it was first, when you look at Ajayi's writing in the 1890s or so, he was complaining about the African traditional religion not allowing to sleep, having 9 vigil all the time. And if you grow up in an African society, you know that happens a lot. Then the Muslim took it over, if you follow the story, and then they abandoned it, and the Pentecostals pick it up, and now the Muslims are having their own prayer on that same stuff. So things move around. But having said that, part of writing this book was to exercise some caution to make sure that you are dealing within the ambience or the conceptual framework of ATR. And sorting this out required some patience so that you are not just translating Christian ideas into ATR. Because this is what some of the earlier thinkers, religious thinkers on Africa did, who are Christians. You could see their notion of God or whatever they were doing was somehow corrupted by translating Christian concepts into the African concept. But I try to avoid that as much as I can. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity for all of us together here in honor of discussing your book, which has been a phenomenal contribution. I wish we have more time to discuss some of these things, because I think there are so many things that I have my own comments here, but that's another thing altogether. So Professor Eno, Professor Mothers, Professor Priska, and Professor Simeon, and Professor Wariboko, I want to say thank you all. And we're going to end it here because I think we're out of time. I hope we will continue to maintain contact or communication among ourselves. Enjoy your time. I'm always actually in Nigeria.
Okay.
I feel like flying there.
Thank you all.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Professor Wariboko. Thank you very, very much for all your contribution.
Professor Wariboko, greet our people in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Professor Chodu,
yeah.
Enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, Professor Langa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Professor
Thank you.
Gobo, God bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah.